Good morning, everyone. My name is Aisha Spradley, Professional Learning and Instruction Coordinator for PSAYDN, and I'll be your moderator for this session. On behalf of PSAYDN, I'd like to welcome each of you to today's webinar entitled Trauma-Informed OST Part 1, which will focus on kindergarten to 8th grade. This session is part 1 in our 2-part series dedicated to exploring trauma-informed best practices for the out-of-school time space. And we really look forward to sharing this space with you and discussing this important matter. Let's see. Forgive me, my computer's doing its own thing. I just need to advance the slide. There we go. Before we jump into today's presentation, let's go over a few quick housekeeping items to set us up for a great session. You may have noticed all participants have been muted upon entry. This was done to minimize the background noise. Make yourself at home. Feel free to use the chat and the Zoom reactions to express your thoughts. We welcome active participation. If you can, please turn on your cameras. We'd love to see your faces. It helps create a stronger sense of community in this virtual setting. If you can't for whatever reason, no worries, we understand that as well. Feel free to put any questions or comments you have in the chat, and I'll hold them to the end for Lindsay during the audience Q&A session. Additionally, we recommend selecting the side-by-side speaker view in order to select that. In order to select that view, go to the View button in the upper right-hand section of your screen. Click on that and select side-by-side speaker view. This will place the slides on the left and the speaker on the right. So if you could do that, it might make, more visually appealing and able to follow and listen. At the end of the session, please take a few minutes to complete the evaluation form. Your feedback helps us to improve future professional development opportunities. And we will share that link in the chat before we wrap up.
You know what I mean? Free school and all that stuff is
really hard to sustain that. All right. So to ground our time together, I want to invite you to share in the chat what inspires your passion for trauma-informed work, or what draws you or interests you in this type of work. You can either unmute yourself or you can share that in the chat. And then my colleague Rachel will read those out, and we cannot wait to hear from you.
Exactly. If you compared it to human, like, why are you complaining about? But it's like you went from 0 all those years to $1,000, and then the second year, $2,000.
Okay, Aisha, so Jessica put her students.
Oh, we love that.
Marissa says wanting to create a comfortable and safe environment for students.
And then I was lucky that, so here's the other thing, so then as a student,
if there's anyone that wants to unmute and say it out loud, that's welcome as well.
Cherise says wanting to meet the needs of the children I serve. Shannon says relating to some of the issues the students deal with. Lydia says what inspires my passion for trauma-informed work is creating a safe space for all. Diane, I care so much about the kids and really strive to connect and make a difference. Camille, I want to be intentional about how I support my students and meet their needs. And Michelle, hi Michelle, understanding that past trauma has current and future impacts, wanting all students to feel safe, valued, respected, and seen requires us to have a trauma-informed approach to everything we do in schools and OST. Very good. Melinda, to be a better educator for all students. They're wonderful.
That was wonderful. What inspires that? Oh, hold on. You can hear me double. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. What inspires us is often a reflection of who we are and the difference that we hope to make in the lives of others. So thank you so much for sharing why you're here and what brought you. Yeah. All right, here comes the fun part. It's my pleasure to welcome our presenter for today, Lindsay Brewster. Lindsay is a trauma-informed social worker and Spanish teacher from Bucks County. She's an advocate for the integration of trauma-informed practices in all educational settings, and she's frequently been at conferences speaking about this as well across Pennsylvania. Lindsay strives to integrate her own lived experience with her professional experience to help everyone she comes in contact with. She's committed to fostering resilience and resourcefulness in students, educators, and caregivers alike. And we are so grateful to have her here today. And I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it, and for that icebreaker. Just before I even share, just hearing your comments alone is to show like you most likely have so many trauma-informed skills that you're already using, and you are already providing that by your want and desire to learn more about it. So I just want to acknowledge that for all of you. Thank you so much for showing up today. I'm going to share my screen here and we will get started. So again, this is part one. Next week will be part two, where we'll focus on high school setting. Like I've already mentioned, that this is just a big part of my life here as someone with lived experience, but also someone as a teacher and a social worker. I just want to represent where I'm coming from, and representing is the Enrichment Workshop for Children base, and I have some of my colleagues online today, so I'm so excited to see you here. I also work for the YMCA and a social emotional basketball program after school. And then during the day, I work with at-risk youth, middle school, and high school. I'm so glad you're all here today. So our agenda, we're gonna first, there's three segments here. We're gonna first focus on an overview of trauma. Then we're gonna focus in on looking at it through a K-4 lens, and then a grades 5 to 8 lens. You will also receive a resource page that is gonna be coming from Ms. Aisha after the session today, that has a ton of resources that I talk about here. Also a lot of language to use, different scenarios, and what to do with those scenarios. So as much as you can get from this session, you will also get in the resources to review later. And then at the end, we will have a Q&A. So I'm hoping to encourage you to use a trauma-informed lens when approaching social emotional learning, and guide you to become safer adults for traumatized youth through the use of trauma-informed approaches, and hopefully inspire and evoke you all to take some sort of actionable step, even if it's the smallest thing, which you already have by showing up today. So I want to start with a skill, a practice, which seems pretty simple, of taking breaths, but this is a huge nervous system regulation technique. And this is one I love to use for the youngins. So we're going to try it together. So what you do is you breathe in, take a nice slow breath in, like you're breathing in, smelling a flower, and you hold for 3 seconds. So 3, 2, 1. And then you slowly exhale, blowing out through your mouth, and blow out the candle. Let's try that again. So practicing breathing in like you're smelling your favorite flower. Hold, 2, 1, and then blow out the candle. Good. Just even this pause alone can be regulating for kids. And I do encourage you to, as many times as you can, ask to take a pause with everyone and breathe. Take a moment to breathe. So we're going to just look at 2 clips that are trauma basics. There are 2 leading researchers. I'll introduce you to one more today. One is Dr. Gabor Mate, and the other is Dr. Peter Levine. And Dr. Gabor Mate will show you in just this minute clip about trauma here. So sound up. Oh no, naturally, of course, when I go to play it, it's going to tell you that it's not there. So I'm going to tell you what he said. So he talks about trauma, he talks about trauma as in, yes, it could be these very intense experiences for someone. It could be this car accident where you have one piece of that trauma. It could also be domestic abuse where there's more ongoing trauma. What he is saying that it's not so much about the action that's happening, it's about the wound. It's about what happens to the person when that happens to them, because it's different for every single person. So he talks about how the way our relationships are in the world and how we treat each other is small traumas here and there, by the way, that we're not taking a trauma-informed approach, that even just our interactions with others can be slightly traumatic to people. It doesn't have to be that you went to war. It doesn't have to be that you experienced this great tragedy. It could be that you were ignored. It could be that you were neglected as a child, and that alone is traumatic. What he says, which is the most profound, I think, is that it's not about the experience that you experience. It's about being left alone after that experience and not being able to process that with anyone. That holds on to that memory inside you, and you start to replay it over and over again until you start to heal. So he's talking more about looking at what happened to that person versus just the event itself. He has a ton. If you actually want to learn more about him, he was just on the podcast with Mel Robbins. She's pretty popular right now about her theory, Let Them theory, but she has him on her podcast if you want to check that out. Let's see if this signs of trauma shows up. And it is not. So that is all good though, because I will also be able to tell you about that. I've studied this for so long. And you can also look these two gentlemen up as well. But he promotes the idea that a lot of our he went into somatic experiencing was his background, which means what's happening in the body to that trauma, like what's going on here. And so a lot of trauma will show up in kids as stomach aches, having trouble sleeping, having trouble eating. So they'll be more somatic. They're getting often migraines, and not knowing exactly where it's coming from. A lot of sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, stomach issues. They're often signs of trauma, especially if they're continuous and you're seeing that they're coming in often with these things. The child who doesn't have the expression, the language will manifest in the body as a response. So that was what they both were talking about, and we'll continue to talk about the signs of trauma as we continue. And again, so this big part, there's so much that goes on here, and it's not to be so overwhelming, as in just be aware that these adverse childhood experiences, they're called ACEs. It was a study done in the 90s about what happens when you have these experiences, what are the long-term effects? And we see here that if you look at the very top, instead of looking at the roots for a moment, just look at the leaves, you will see these are the main events that happen in people's homes or in their communities, with domestic violence, mental illness, emotional abuse, depression, homelessness. These are all things that are going to be an adverse experience for a child to witness or experience themselves. But as a social worker, what we also look at is the systems theory, and saying, hey, yes, it might look like it's just this personal family's issue, but really underneath it, it's systemic. There's problems in the community for lack of opportunity, economic mobility, social capital, violence in the area, poverty in general. So instead of focusing on how do we help this one child, a lot of the social work theory comes in, how do we look at systems and shift dynamics, which are very challenging to do. So we start with one person at a time, and then start with organizations where, okay, we're in this out of school time organization. How do we build in these social, emotional, and trauma-informed approaches to change the roots of the practice versus just looking at one child and how do we cope with that one child's behavior? Okay, so with this is to show when you experience these ACEs, you go towards the red where there's toxic stress. Eustress, which is the green, is stress we experience every day, and we're able to cope with it and we move forward. It's just a little stressful. And then it might become where it's continuous, but it's tolerable. when you have ACEs and when you have these traumas, you're experiencing like toxic stress. So that's kind of how I look at it with like, if you can't remember all of this trauma language, just notice that these kids are under severe stress and it's intense and it's prolonged. But if you notice at the bottom where it says there's a buffering, and that's that social emotional learning. That is the parental resilience and caretaker resilience. And that is early detection and intervention, which is what we're doing here, is that we're being aware at the younger age how we can approach so that we can help them limit the toxic stress, or at least cope with the stress in a more tolerable way. So there's a lot of research that's going out now, and this is even before the pandemic. So I can imagine there's even more, and it's still coming out to date. But the out of school time programs that incorporate social emotional learning act as a protective buffer, because out of all these things that are happening, and those traumas are the pipeline to mental illness, to incarceration, to domestic violence, to alcoholism, to addiction. It just is. It's natural approach there. However, there are so many protective factors, and you as out of school time staff are these protective buffers, and it's a big responsibility, but it's also something that can give us hope that, hey, we can actually help limit any long-term effects of health, mental health risk and other health risks. Okay, and just a few things, even if you just take these things from this whole discussion, will be helpful, that you don't need to be their therapist. You are not trying to have to go in and talk about all their traumas with them and work through that. That's not your job, but you can still provide a therapeutic setting for them. You can still be a therapeutic person for them by being a safer person because you're aware of what's going on. That alone makes you safer. A big part in any sort of trauma healing is that the healing takes place in relationships, but not just any relationships, ones that they feel safe with them. And to acknowledge that the work that you do is so important and you make a difference every day. And one of my colleagues is on here, and I have it actually here, a little tag that says you make a difference every day. Because when I worked in OST, when I was 18 and 17 and 16, I was showing up and having fun with them, but I wasn't looking at it in this lens. I wasn't realizing the impact I was having or that I could have. Now, years, decades later, I'm like, oh my gosh, every interaction can provide this therapeutic approach to this child. And even my 5 minutes with this kid is making a difference. So don't doubt yourself that you're doing the good work already. So when you are experiencing trauma, we're going to look at it in the way that the brain works. So the 3 main areas here, you will see cognition, can I learn? Relational, am I loved, your emotional state, and then that survival piece, which is at your brain stem, and that is processing and integrating your experience. And the question is, am I safe? So when you go through all of those traumatic experiences, people are stuck in that survival mode there, where everything they do, it becomes their personality, is keep myself safe at all times. So when you look at this behavior, it's not this oppositional behavior to you or to this program. It's some part of that person is saying, I'm not safe and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get there. So our goal as staff and educators is to help ourselves and younger kids move from their survival state to the relational and cognition state, which we'll talk about how we do that. Okay, your typical responses when you're in that survival state or when you're triggered, which could be, and I want to say this, is that when a child or a person at any age is triggered and you have not resolved that trigger, meaning you haven't discussed it, you haven't physically moved it through your body, you just kind of experienced it and kept going. The past becomes our present. So a lot of things come in our way and they're triggers left and right because they're reminding us of things that happened to us. And our emotional part of our brain, which you will see where it says relational, emotional state, that part of your brain does not know how long it's been since something happened. It has no concept of time in that way. It knows something happened before another, but it could be 2 years or 2 minutes, and it doesn't know. So a lot of the time when you haven't resolved trauma, it's very present for you. So you have a lot of trauma responses then. So these are our typical ones. People, I'm sure you have heard of it, of the fight, flight, freeze. This is happening in the brainstem. This is all protective factors for us. This is trying to get the kid and ourselves to safety. And this is what our body does to stay safe. And you might look at some of these and notice some of these already, some kids that you're thinking of in your mind, or even adults or yourselves, because this is a very common human experience with trauma, especially if it's not something in your repertoire where you're thinking about it all the time, but you might realize, oh, wait, I'm kind of acting out, or this child's acting out in a trauma response. What if we don't punish? I mean, the big paradigm shift is, let's not punish behavior that's actually a trauma response, because you're not gonna, that's not the behavior that they're trying to, that you can resolve through consequences and punishment. It's the kind of behavior that can be resolved through relationship and getting them back to a calm state. Then you can have consequences, but you first need to look at, hey, this person's body needs to calm down first. And then we can talk about how to approach things in a different way. So the other person that I want to introduce to you is Dr. Bruce Perry, and he's a leading trauma researcher. So his model is called the neurosequential model, meaning just the sequence of the brain development. So you will see at the bottom that you're at the brain stem. That's your survival mode. That's your fight or flight. That's, am I safe? I'm going to get myself safe. Even if it's like, wow, this seems like a safe situation for that person, but to them, it's not. So then if you're only using your brainstem there as your main resource, then look at coordination, movement, your emotional response, controlling your emotions. All of that is offline. You are right now like, what do I got to do to stay safe? I don't care what she's saying. I don't care what they're saying or doing. I need to get out of here, or I need to, show defiance to show that I'm not comfortable with this. So he's trying to show you and show us all that we're trying to access that cortical, that prefrontal, right where all that decision making is happening. We're trying to talk to these kids. We're trying to get to understand what's going on, and they're in the brainstem stage. So we're not able to get them to listen and follow through because they're not there. So what his kind of tagline is this. It's called regulate, relate, reason. So just looking at that model right there is what he's basing this off. First, at the bottom, you'll see the brainstem is relating to regulate. You first need to get them to feel okay. A lot of it is breath work. We'll talk more about that too. Getting them into a safe environment. It could be a calming corner. It could just be away from the scenario they were in. But you want to regulate them first before you then work with that emotional connection with them, because that's that midbrain and limbic system. So once they feel a little safer, then you start being like, hey, I want to validate their emotions, talk about what they're experiencing. Then when they are in that state, they can reason with you. You can ask about, why do you think you did that? And what can we do to work on that? But trying to do that at the very moment that that person is triggered, you're setting yourself up for not having it be resolved. So we want to not head straight for the reasoning. We want to start at the emotional regulation piece, which, like I showed you in the very beginning, it could be as simple as pause and take a few breaths. And then sometimes it needs a little more.
Lindsay, can we get you to turn your camera on, please?
Oh my gosh, of course.
Thank you so much.
I am so sorry that was not happening. Give me 1 second. Sorry, everybody. I was just using all my hands and everything and didn't even see it. So this same model here is I'm going to teach you another skill to use to remember this regulate, relate, and reason. So this is called flipping the lid. So even if you want to just join me in this, so you have some practice with it, you choose one of your hands to use. Your thumb is your brain stem. Your palm is that emotional state, that limbic system. So then you cross the thumb over the palm and then your fingers go over top. That's going to be your cortex. That's going to be your thinking brain. So when a child or a person has been triggered, it's something that I will talk to the kids as, oh, your lid is flipped. You flipped the lid. And this is something that can show them that. And I teach this to them so that they're aware and they're not so confused about why is my body reacting in this intense way. It's like, oh, you're in your lizard brain. I'll call it a lizard brain where it's just very reactive. So in order for us to put the lid back on with that child, we need to get them into a calmer state through movement, through finding a safer space for them, through working it out with them that they feel calmer, and then talking to them, and then relating to them, and then reasoning with them. So it is the lid up, your lid is flipped, up, your lizard brain is out, let's go back online. So that concept can be used for yourself to remember, but it also can be approachable to young kids. They think it's funny about the lizard brain. So why is it so essential? I mean, I'm saying all of this, but what's happening here for OST? So the main thing with the trauma-informed approach versus just a typical social emotional curriculum is that you're prioritizing something a little different, like safety and trust. A lot of times people who have experienced trauma, especially young kids, don't trust then. If an adult hurt me, it's going to be harder for me to trust other adults. So your goal is to prioritize creating trusting relationships with these kids and noticing that behavior, they're just trying to communicate with you. A lot of those times, those triggered states are communicating to you like, okay, this kid feels unsafe. How do we get him to feel safe? And then we'll talk about like what's going on. But they're just trying to communicate with you like, hey, I'm unsafe and I need your help. It also, if you look in the center, that's a big one. This is the big shift when we talk, what's wrong with that kid? Or what's wrong with this person? And we say it, you know, it's a part of our cultural dialogue and the way we talk. But when we shift the perspective, this paradigm shift that I've been talking about is what's wrong with you turns to what happened to you? And then what can I do to help you, right? So you're supporting their autonomy and you're responding with care. A lot of power dynamic. We tend to have that control over to keep things safe. I think that's well-intentioned, but the most thing is that these kids need a little more tender, loving care. Okay, so we're going to focus on the two lens here. I have some phrases that I say a lot to these kids. Oh, I see you. Oh, I see you. Even if I'm just looking at what they're doing, I just want to let them know I see you. If they're talking to me, I'm trying to talk to someone else, I'm not like, shush, I'm talking. I say, oh, I hear you. Give me a minute. I hear you. I see you. Give me a minute and I'll come right back to you. So just getting them to know that I'm not ignoring them, because even that alone, if they're ignored at home, if they're dismissed at home, it can feel really tough, even that small interaction being ignored like that. And of course, you believe in them and reminding them that. Okay, so I will just showing you that I do have a little lineup for this, but in effort of time, we'll move to that lineup right now. So these key things that I'm popping up here are what makes that trauma-informed piece big, that you are a key support figure for them, that you provide predictable, nurturing environments. That predictability is big, especially if there's chaotic home lives. If there has been an interruption to someone's life or it is naturally chaotic, having a predictable setting is so healing in itself. They don't have to worry about what's coming next. That helps them build that trust and safety. Everything that you're doing with this play and SEL can be and support that healing. and you ultimately are providing that protective space and helping them be resilient. The goal here is, like, again, like you said, like I said earlier, you're not a therapist, but you can be therapeutic. And in that therapeutic piece, you're helping them build resilience, that, yeah, these things have happened to you and may continue to happen to you, because we can't stop sometimes what parents do, but you are going to be okay. You're going to get through this, and I'm going to be here to help you get through it. So that's that resilience piece that's very, very big for trauma-informed care, because you might not be able to protect them from what happens when they leave your care, but you can remind them that you'll help them. You'll always be with them to help them through it. Okay. So you can relieve, it says that up to 40% of symptoms in high-risk youth by providing this structure and emotional support. So just what you're already doing and being this consistent, caring, kind, protective, loving person, you are helping them reduce symptoms. Okay. This is one of our little love bugs who that trauma has affected deeply. And here are some things that I've seen in kids. And I just want you to take a moment and just notice if you can pick out a child in mind. They can't really express their emotions that well. They have outbursts. They don't really calm themselves down very well. They might seem pretty overreactive to like little things that seem little to you. They could be hypervigilant and always on guard. They're impulsive, they're defiant, there's conflicts, all of these things. Now, again, not everything is, oh, that's trauma. But if we look at a lens of being like, what if it is? Then we're kind of covering the bases of helping this person, no matter what is the root of it. But this little girl here, she is prone to all of this. And, you know, she lost her mother and she's being raised by her father, and there's a lot of instability there. And that little dragon there, she doesn't just hug that dragon and just carry that dragon around. She slams that dragon everywhere. She's throwing it around. She's squeezing it so hard, it's gonna rip apart. So that, just looking at that alone is showing she has aggression inside, and this is actually helping her to relieve it. But these are all opportunities. A big one here is memory and information retention impairment. Man, if I didn't write everything down in a journal for decades, I wouldn't remember a thing. It is a big part, or your brain's trying to protect yourself, your body is. So these kids are not focused on trying to remember, they're trying to stay alive and stay safe in the moment. So just be mindful that they might be forgetful, or you could be like, I told you 10 times. Well, they might not have ever registered it. So just, you know, it's not every kid. Some kids are just forgetful and they don't have trauma. They're just, you know, not paying attention to you. But a lot of kids, memory isn't the most important thing for them. It's just staying safe. Okay, so I asked you to think of some of those children, and then let's kind of talk about how we can, and all of this again will be for both for the K-4 and then the 4-8. A lot of this is overlapping here, but your SEL competencies come from KSEL, the collaboration of academic, social, emotional learning. So here are the things that we're going to focus on for the rest of this is self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Now, our director has put the SEL competencies in our curriculum. So when these teachers are getting their curriculum each month, they are focusing on a different competency. So that is incorporated in how we do our curriculum, but it could be done on a day-to-day basis. As you see, I talked about the systems. There are systems of all these social emotional learning pieces in every system, including your own system, including yourself. Okay, so again, these are the areas that we're focused on and how you can be more trauma-informed in them, okay? So I'm not gonna read through each and every one, and again, the resource that I give you will have a lot of this too, so don't worry too much about writing everything I say down. The gentle approach is important. Validating emotions without judgment. So this is like a reflection piece. I just want to stop and show you what that looks like. It's so simple, but it's like the child's crying, and I'm sure many of you do this already, be like, okay, you're crying right now. So I'm validating, you're crying right now. You're upset right now. I see that you're really upset right now. So I'm just simply tuning in and connecting and noticing what's happening, stating what's happening, and then just stating that. Or you can ask them and they could always tell you, no, I'm not upset, I'm mad. And we're not talking about wrong behaviors, bad behaviors. We're talking about the big triggers. Okay. I also wrote at the bottom here, choices. Choices are huge for students who have experienced lack of choice, lack of power, lack of control. So a lot of those behaviors that are like outlandish behaviors, well, yeah, they might look like they're so desperately trying to get control because maybe something happened or is happening in their life where they don't have it. So they're going to try in your setting to use it. So just keeping that in mind in terms of, how you move forward. A lot of it is just bringing it to your awareness and seeing what comes forward after that. Okay. You are also models, and I am sure that you're amazing models of this, that you model empathy and compassion. You use stories, and you're being mindful of people's background. This is something, that social awareness piece, where I tell some of our staff, or as many people as I can, if something happens at home and they're allowed to hit, they're allowed to punch. That's a big thing of like, fight back. And so instead of shaming their culture or their home life and say that's bad, I will say, oh, well, at base, we're going to teach you how to do XYZ. We're going to teach you how to learn these new skills. So it's just being mindful not to shame their home lives, no matter how bad they might seem to you, and just have that awareness there. And slow and steady, you will build that consistent trust with them. And that's what's going to be the game changer of everything that happens. Anything that you do, the most important thing you can do is build a safe relationship with that child, because that is where the healing occurs. Okay. And we're focusing on empowerment. We're focusing on safety. We're focusing on real life scenarios. So instead of being like, that was wrong, or that was bad, using that kind of language, we'll use language like, that was unsafe. This is something I say all the time. Do you want to have fun? Well, you have to have safe to have fun. And I'm sure Melinda and Diane are saying the same thing. They're a part of BASE here, and they're online. So we definitely focus on that piece first. And then using that language, instead of using correction, like, okay, you're acting out, you need to go. It's like, oh, I'm wondering what's happening right now. I'm wondering why you're behaving in this way. And just using more of that curiosity piece. Okay. So you have your regulate, your relate, and your reason. Now your regulating is your brain stem piece. So you want to have rhythmic movement, a lot of that rocking, self-soothing, thinking of a child when they're in that baby stage, they love to be rocked. So do other people. That's how we start to regulate ourselves. Check your lighting. A lot of sounds and noises can be really overwhelming. So you want to have maybe some headphones, or check the lighting there, breathing exercises, maybe some jumping jacks together, sensory toys. That's how you're going to get them back to a state where they can communicate with you. And then the communication can happen. That am I loved piece. Am I seen? Yes. Saying things like, I'm here with you. It's okay. Like, I see this is really hard for you, but I'm not leaving. I'm going to be right here for you. Matching in a tone, in a grounded way. It's okay. I understand what you're going through. I'm not mad at you. You could tell a joke. You can just get on their level and remain calm, because they'll end up telling you more. They'll end up trusting you more when you are just like, hey, I'm not here to discipline you right away. I'm here to make you feel calm and be okay. And then we'll talk about it. Okay. So this relation piece is like, when their storm meets our calm, we have to co-regulate. So if they're going, they mirror you. So if you're going in hot and heavy because they were hot and heavy, then there's a storm. But when you can create safety within yourself first, then the co-regulation piece can come together because they feel safe with you and they feel like they can work it through with you. So that's the goal with the co-regulation piece. I'm going to skip through this quickly only because of time, but again, all of this stuff will be in your resource packet of how to co-regulate with these kids. A lot of one-to-one movement here. The last thing that you do when you already have the regulation piece, when they have regulated, when you have started to relate to them, then there's those moments. And this doesn't have to be 15 minutes. This could all, once you start practicing with it, it can all happen in the first couple minutes, where then you start to reason with them and asking them, like, let's figure out a plan. How do we help you feel more in control? What might help you the next time? So that's your last stage that you're doing. And it could span through an hour. You could say, okay, this happened at 4:15. I'm gonna make sure that they feel calm enough. I'm gonna let them know that I'll be back and we're gonna talk about this. You don't need to solve everything right then and there. You can allow time and space to help you and help that child feel like they can talk to you. Okay, we have scenarios here, and it's an unfortunate part of having quick webinars here where we won't be able to get to too many of these, but I have a list of, I think, 13 scenarios for you in the resource packet. It has the scenarios, it tells you what to do and why that thing works. So you will have experience looking through them, and you're also welcome to reach out to me at any time here. But ultimately, your goal is to get them into a safe place where they're feeling like they can talk to you. Okay, just for a moment, this is something where we have to kind of be silly too. Like, we have to be practicing these breathings, but I'm silly with these kids, and that helps them trust me more, at least, because they can open up more. So something that I like to do is like just shake it off, just shake. So even if you allow yourself, even if you don't have your camera on, just shake your hands, shake your shoulders, move your body around a little bit. And quickly, I'll let you know that this is huge to trauma release. Actually, if you notice animals, let's say a dog who just got in a dog fight, when they're done, if you notice, they will shake their bodies. They're literally releasing that energetic action throughout their body and letting it go. Dr. Peter Levine talks about that say something happened to a child or to a person, you have that moment to release that and allow that child to move on like nothing else happened. So shaking is one part, is a somatic thing to physically move these things through our body, and they don't need to know why. You just start shaking with them. Okay. So moving, it's slightly different with the 5 to 8, grades 5 to 8. Everything else that I just talked about is equally as important, and it's going to relate to this, which is why we're not taking as long here, is because it's all the same with anyone. However, there's some things to keep in mind because this age group is a little more vulnerable because there are hormonal changes and relationship changes with their friends. Okay, so a lot of the times you'll see social withdrawal happen at this point. You will also see poor decision-making and a lot of erratic behavior. Okay, so another fun fact for everyone to know that what you're doing, this SEL piece and this trauma-informed piece has helped children with that resilience and coping skills, that having this out-of-school time can be a true lifesaver to these kids, and giving them these skills now will help them prevent any further issues. Okay, so with pre-adolescence, when you're in like the 9 to 12 ages here, you have huge brain growth. You have so much social processing happening, and your emotional control kind of goes a little bit offline because it's exploding. And since trauma alters the way we start to look at the world, we are wired for connection and survival. But what happens when you experience a lot of trauma, your brain starts to rewire for protection. So it's not so much worried about connecting with others, it's keeping yourself safe becomes the top priority. So you'll start to notice that more in this age group when the relationship problems start to come up and there's more anxiety around relationships. And to also keep in mind that trauma leads to feeling, it's not like Dr. Gabor Mate was saying, it's not that you had that trauma, it's that when you experienced that trauma, it made you feel low self-esteem, it made you feel bad about yourself, a ton of shame, a ton of guilt, a ton of fear. So those things are going to start stirring up even more during this time because they're experiencing identity confusion, they're experiencing, they want to speak up, but they don't know what to say, or they feel unsupported. So this stage is when things start to get a little more vocal. You'll see more risky behaviors. You will see a lot of aggression and impulsivity. And yes, it can be like, oh, that's just a kid. That's just how they are. It's like, well, kind of. Yes. And if there's a lot of it and you see it all the time, like literally kids running with scissors kind of deal, just because they felt like impulsive, it could be attention deficit. But attention deficit and hyperactivity often overlay with trauma symptoms. So that is something to consider too. Okay, your executive functioning, that cortex part, that third part, that reasoning part, that isn't as strong with kids who have been staying in survival mode. So your memory, your organization, all of that is kind of weak up there. So it's not that they're dumb or it's not that they're behind, it's that they just haven't had the opportunity to be online as often. They've been in survival mode. So we want to help them out with that. Okay. And again, they can have these waves of feeling intense anger anyway, no matter what, because they're going through these ages, but it might be a little more overwhelming for them because it's attached to a traumatic experience. And this is where they'll be a little more sensitive to things that you'll be like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But again, if something has been happening for like 6 years to this person and someone else does it in front of them, it's going to trigger a response that it's been going on for a long time. So you have this volatile experience happening. So you're going to need this trauma-informed approach. All right. You might see these outbursts, these vigilance, the defiance, the low self-esteem. This is not just, it's a hard discernment, right? Like of like, is this middle? Is this just going through the time, or is this child actually struggling with something deeper? So it's something to consider that there could be more under the surface. And of course, it's going to impact everything, including their learning and behavior. Absenteeism, I work a ton with truancy in middle and high school, and our truant students are the ones who are in services, in social services, because they've experienced so much trauma. So it has a big effect on them coming in and forming relationships with people because they're not even there. So they could have a hard time with that. Okay. But here are some approaches, okay? So you have all of these social emotional strategies, but if you look at it in a way where we are trying to help these kids name sensations, something like name entertainment, so like an emotion wheel, doing big feeling check-ins, and having that be a part of your everyday thing, especially art and journaling and like abstract work. Again, all of these things are things that we've already talked about, how you model these perspectives, how you want to have this co-regulation strategy with them and say like, you don't have to do this alone. Like, I'm going to be with you. That's that big piece for them, that eventually they'll be able to use those strategies outside. But right now, like, I'm with you, I've got you. Let's grab a fidget. Let's go sit over here. Okay. Then we'll talk about discipline, but you don't need to discipline every little thing, because we don't want to discipline trauma triggers. We want to discipline, when they're in a reasonable state to relate to what you're talking about. Okay. Emotional pacing, like I talked about before, you don't need to have that like, okay, he did that action or they did that action, and now we have to go and head to it right now and resolve it right here and now. Try that pacing technique where it's like, okay, let's get them to feel regulated before that we can relate to them, before we can reason with them, and allow that time to occur for them so they don't feel so threatened either. And another thing to remind you about validating, like, I see you're upset. It's okay to be upset. Being upset is a part of, the experience of growing up. Okay. And using these restorative practices and structured opportunities for students and giving them choices. A lot of this, instead of just giving a consequence and a discipline, it's like, how do we restore the relationship and show them that it can be done? And lastly, giving them these responsible decision-making opportunities, because this is the big word at the bottom, besides safety and empowerment, which of course are huge. The big thing why we want to have choice and validation is agency. And I'm going to close it here for this agency piece right here. Agency is having the power and the ability to make your own choices and decisions, ultimately influencing your own life and outcome. You want to give these kids as many opportunities to feel like they're making a choice for themselves. It could be as simple as, do you want an apple or an orange today? Allowing them to be like, I can make a choice. That choice is for me to learn and grow from. And so you want to empower them to make as many choices as they can in their life when they feel like they don't have as many choices. So ultimately, we're creating a safe environment for them. And containment looks like this. You are able to be there for them with mental space. You have time, you're not distracted, you're setting a nice firm boundary with them, and you're really focused in on them. And when they feel safe, then they feel like they can be themselves and open up more, and you'll be able to create more of a healing environment for them. And in the because we also want to have a Q&A, and you just listen so intently to all of that. And I'm sure there's a ton of information that you're like, I don't know what's going on. But again, the big thing here, if you can take one piece from all of this, if you can take one simple thing and move forward in that direction, then you're off to a great start. And you're already doing great because you're here. But I invite you to also look at the resources. And if you have any questions, you are, of course, welcome to email me or ask me now. But for that piece, I want to give some time for the question and the Q&A if anything came up.
Yes, we're going to open the floor now to any questions you have. You can either type them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask Lindsay.
Hey, what's your question? Is it Charis?
Hey, Charisse, thank you.
Hi, Charisse.
For your concrete examples. I'm always waiting for those. I'm like, I love theory, but how do I actually apply this?
Sure.
So my question is more of a wondering, and that is, like I say, I work with an after-school program and an in-school services through volunteers. We send volunteers in to read with our children, so once a week. So this is just a wondering, would taking more time to focus on safety and relationship in the school day allow us to make greater progress in academics? Because right now our academic need in Pennsylvania is high, and our whether it's rural or urban or even suburban, our achievement is we're below like the baseline for achievement. So that's what I'm wondering,
You bring up
is
a
if
really good
including
point.
these opportunities do you think that including these opportunities allows for actual growth instead of increasing the academic time, like 2 maths and 2 readings? And
Right.
that's what I was wondering.
Yes, I think where your head is what we're kind of shifting to, of being like, hey, focus more on the relationship, focus more on creating this safety with this person. They're going to then, you'll be able to help them academically. A lot of their academics, along with just like trying to catch up academically, is they might not feel like they have enough support, or they have low self-esteem that they don't feel like they can do it. But what if your relationship helps build their self-esteem and helps them see, oh, wait, I have more talents, more skills than I realized. Oh, wait, maybe I can solve this problem. Oh, this person's going to help me with my homework. Like, all of that starts to shift. And working with at-risk youth, like, I see it all the time, where my goal as a social worker is build my relationship with them and not have them solely focused on their grades. Now, third marking period, we're like, oh, wow, your grades have gotten so much better. It's because they feel safer with someone to talk to, we're willing to help them, and they feel like they have more self-esteem. So I do see that as the undercurrent of, if you want these behavior and academic changes, start where you're building these just safe relationships with children and, older youth too. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you.
I had something just to mention. Experiencing some trauma myself, just losing my home to a fire, and experiencing homelessness for like a year and a half, 2 years, with a young child myself, and being exposed to the resources that were offered to us, but also being a professional in the field and working with children that also are showing the same, I related to them in a completely different way. And being 2 years later, it actually was on Easter Sunday. So it's 2 years to the day for me. But I also just want to shed light on the timing. Like, it may seem like a long time for these students, like, oh, that happened 3-4 years ago, 2 years ago. They should be over it by, like, you think that, you might have improved, but you may have just be getting out of that fight response, and your body could be just going back into some sort of normalcy. And then that's kind of where the foggy brain kicks in, at least speaking for myself. But it could be, it could be time, like I don't even know how long, because I'm still in it myself. But I don't know how long it takes for someone to, quote unquote, heal. So if you're thinking, this student, if it happened in second grade and by sixth grade, they should be okay, I just want to say that's not the case.
I'm so sorry for that experience that you have. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and willing to share that, because that's exactly right. Is you don't know when they're going to heal. And that emotional part of the brain, no concept of time. So if it was never resolved in second grade and you're still resolving it by sixth grade, you can either see, worse symptoms or still some. So I can relate to that too, with that it's a chemical process too of coming out of a fight or flight. Like, you're having this brain chemical process. It does take time, and to be patient and consistent, I think, is the biggest piece here of, like, allow them to heal, allow yourself to heal, and just keep showing up and being that person that whenever they're ready, you'll be able to help them. Thank you so much for that.
If no one has any more questions, I'm going to close it out. Just want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to say something if they need to, or don't want anyone to feel like they're not being heard. So that concludes our session for today. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. I'd like to thank Lindsay for taking time to share this information with us. That applies to us as well as the youth we serve. And please take a moment to click on the survey that is in the chat and fill it out. It helps inform our professional development. Join us when Lindsay comes back on April 23rd for part 2, focusing on 9th to 12th grade. Thank you so much and have an amazing day.
Thanks, everybody.